everyone, welcome back to my channel. Happy 2021. Hopefully everyone is having a great start to your new year. I have so many plans for my channel in the new year, so if you are new, stick around by hitting that subscribe button and don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. Also, I am making over our fixer-upper farmhouse. I haven't had any update videos here on YouTube, but I am updating a lot on Instagram, so go and follow me over there at Jessica Lynn at Home, and I will have a video soon here on YouTube about that. It's just taking a long time to get things together for this fixer-upper. So it's a lot of work, but stick around with me because I will have updates on that and more DIYs to come on this channel, so you don't want to miss out. But today you clicked on this video to watch my top 20 Dollar Tree Valentine's DIYs, which I absolutely love. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. DIY number 1. This DIY is super easy. I started off with one of these decorative wooden framed boxes from Dollar Tree. I chose the black wooden frame, but Dollar Tree does sell ones in different colors and different styles, so you could choose whichever one goes best with your decor. Then I just went ahead and filled it with some reindeer moss that I had left over from Christmas. You could use whatever moss you have. Now I have 2 bunches of these peach colored roses that I had left over from my last Dollar Tree Valentine's DIY. I just plucked them off of their stems, and I'm adding some hot glue to the bottom of them and placing them inside of the box. I ended up doing a total of 9 roses inside the box, so I did 3 rows of 3 roses each. I think you could definitely do this with the rose buds that Dollar Tree sells as well. You would just need a few more bunches probably to fill the whole box up. I love how this turned out, and it looks so cute as a little planter box, but you could also hang this on the wall because it does have a hanger on the back. I would just recommend hot gluing the moss down to the box so that way it doesn't fall out. But since I'm not using it that way, I'm just going to go ahead and remove the hanger from the back of the box, and that was it to this project.
It's a song about your sweetheart, and how nobody can steal me away. Yeah, I am yours, 'cause I want you and I wanted you to know.
DIY number 2 is just as easy as the first DIY. I'm just going to use one of these frames from Dollar Tree with the twine and the clothespins. Then I just removed the back from the frame, and now I'm going to use this Love scrapbook paper I got from Hobby Lobby. It's 4 for $1, so this piece was like 25 cents, so super inexpensive. And I just used the back of the frame to trace out onto the back of the paper the shape I needed, the size that I needed, and then I just cut it out. Next, I'm using some Mod Podge, which you can pick up some Mod Podge at Dollar Tree if you don't have it. This one came from, I think, Joann Fabrics a long time ago, but I'm just going to spread that over the back of the frame and place my scrapbook paper over top of it. Now, it will curl up a little bit if you can see that here, but if you let it dry, which I just didn't have time to do, with something heavy on top of it, then you shouldn't have a problem with it. Once I put it back in the frame, you couldn't tell it was curled up at all anyways. Then the 2 clothespins that come with the frame are a little bit bigger than the clothespins that I had from Dollar Tree, and I wanted 3 clothespins on the frame, so I just removed the bigger clothespins and added the 3 smaller ones. Next, I took this sign from Dollar Tree with the galvanized hearts, and I peeled the galvanized hearts off of the sign. It was a little difficult for a couple of them to come off, and I found myself bending the galvanized hearts. So just be careful, because if you bend those hearts too much, they will break because they are not heavy duty. So just be careful when you're taking them off, but the last one came off super easy, so I don't know what was up with the other 2. The last thing that I did was take those galvanized hearts and apply them to the 3 clothespins on the frame, and that was it for this DIY. I think it turned out really cute, and it's perfect to add to some farmhouse Valentine's Day decor.
Something about her eyes and how they're always shining, or something cliche like ooh. Baby, I only want you.
DIY number 3 is another easy one. I picked up 2 of these glass pillar candles from Dollar Tree, and I just need to peel the sticker off of them, but they are a little hard to peel. So thanks to some of my subscribers from a previous video a while back, they had suggested using a blow dryer to heat up the sticker to peel it off easier, and that worked perfect. So thank you guys for that suggestion. All I had to do was clean up the residue with a little Goo Gone. The next step was to take some masking tape or painter's tape and just tape off halfway up the glass on each pillar candle. I just laid them next to each other to make sure that they were the same height that I put the tape at. The next thing I did was take some white chalk paint, this is by Rust-Oleum, and then I took some Waverly red paint and mixed it together to make a light pink color. But this light pink color that you're seeing here is not the pink color that I went with. I actually wanted a more peachy color to match the roses from Dollar Tree from my last DIY in this video. So I ended up coming back for the second coat and mixing that pink paint that I mixed up with a little orange paint and a little more white paint until I got a peachy pink color that I liked. Then I painted a second coat on. Once the paint was all dry, I went ahead and peeled off the masking tape, and I got that nice clean line that I was looking for. Now, chalk paint does chip off really easily on glass surfaces, and if you saw my last video with the candy heart dishes, I did forget to mention that I did seal them with a clear wax by Waverly, which is what this is. You could use polyurethane or Mod Podge, just something so that the paint doesn't chip. Now, these hearts were from my last video for my Valentine's DIYs. I had 3 of them left over, so I'm going to use 2 of them here and drill holes in both of them with my drill. And then I just took some of that paint that I mixed and painted the back and the front of them with 2 coats of paint. These hearts aren't necessarily needed for this project. I just thought I would go ahead and use them to hold up my scrapbook paper a little bit better, but you could just use the scrapbook paper. I'm just gonna go ahead and take the hearts and trace out the shape onto the scrapbook paper and then cut that out. Then I'm just going to take some Mod Podge and apply that to both of the hearts and apply the scrapbook paper to that. So you could just skip the wooden hearts altogether and just use the scrapbook paper and punch holes in them with a hole puncher, and I think that would work out too. Once the scrapbook paper was applied to the wooden hearts, I just took my pencil and poked through the scrapbook paper in that hole in the wooden hearts so that way the hole would go all the way through. The next thing that I did was take some twine and string it through each one of the hearts and tie a knot. So I had 2 separate pieces of twine on each heart, and then I took that piece of twine with a heart and tied it onto the top of each candle, and then wrapped the excess twine around the top of the candle and used some hot glue to secure it down. And that was it for this DIY. I think it's perfect for Valentine's Day, but you could use it for a bridal shower or even a wedding.
Singing their love song, and they sing it kind of beautiful, calling each other sweetheart. I promise nobody can get in their way or steal the show. They're in love.
Just as easy as the last 3, I'm going to use these packs of foam dice. So I have 4 of them, and I'm just giving them 2 coats of white chalk paint. Next, I have a pack of these wood letters from Dollar Tree. I'm just going to be using the letters H, M, and E from them, and I'm going to give them 2 coats of this black chalk paint by Waverly. Now this heart is one of those red hearts like I had for the candles. I had 1 left over out of 4 of them that I tore off of a sign for a previous DIY, like I said. And I painted it white for some other reason, but now I'm painting it with that peachy pink color that I mixed. Now everything is dry, and the next step is to just attach my H, my heart, my M, and my E to one side of the dice with some hot glue. Now you could use the O from that letter pack and apply it to the other side, and then you could use this all year round. I love how this turned out.
Baby, I only want you. It's true. And then he said, I wrote you a love song, and I tried to.
First DIY, I am just going to use this piece of heart decor from Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to take my scissors and cut the tinsel at the top and then just start unwrapping it. It's really easy to unwrap, and I'm just going to take it all off. Now I'm going to take these cream colored roses I had gotten from Dollar Tree a while back. I have 15 of them, and I already plucked them off of the stems, and I'm just going to start in the middle of the top of the heart, and I am just going to hot glue them to the corners of the grids around the top of the heart until I run out. So what I'm doing is I'm following the shape of the heart on the outside, but I'm only going about 2 grid lengths down with the cream colored roses because I have 2 different other colors to add to this heart as well. So I want to create a line at the top of the cream colored roses, and then I'll come in with a different color in the middle and a different color at the bottom. You want to make sure when you're adding your roses that the bumps of the top of the heart are your peaks, and you're really adding more roses to those outside bumps, so that way you create that divot in the middle so that it looks like a heart shape. Now the next color I am using is a peachy, pinky color. It's real light. These roses again are from Dollar Tree, and I actually used 4 bunches of this color. So that was 20 roses altogether, and again I just plucked them from the stems, and I just started where the cream colored roses left off at and hot glued them to the corners of the grids. Once I got 3 bunches, which was 15 roses, all put down into a line which filled up about 1.5 grids, I came back with the last bunch of roses, the 5 roses that were left over, and I kind of hot glued those in the middle to fill in the gaps around those, and you can see that here. And then I do take the petals of the roses as well and hot glue those together to fill in some gaps. Now the last color is a dark peachy pink color that I got from Dollar Tree, and I had 3 bunches of these, so I had 15 roses, and I just filled in the bottom of the heart with those. Again, doing the same thing, hot gluing them to the corners of the grid and then filling in where I needed to, so that way there were no gaps. I made sure to turn the whole thing over at the end and reinforce with some hot glue. Then the last thing that I did was use some of this burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree to create a hanger for this door hanger or wreath or whatever you want to call it. I just cut a piece off, and then I hot glued it down to the back of the grid pattern. Make sure you use some scissors or something to hold it in place, but that was it. I love how it turned out.
Do you know how much I love you? You put my favorite song on, I put my feet up, and we just sing along.
For the next DIY, I'm using 3 of these glass heart dishes from Dollar Tree. One of them I'm going to paint with some regular white chalk paint by Rust-Oleum. I'm going to give it 2 coats of paint to cover it. Then the second one, I'm going to mix some white and some red paint together to make a darker pink color. You want to make sure when you're mixing the colors together that you mix enough to paint 2 coats on to your piece, so that way you don't have to remix colors and you get the wrong color the second time. So just make sure you mix enough paint together to do 2 coats. So then I just went ahead and painted the second glass with the darker pink color, and like I said, I did 2 coats. You want to do 1 coat, let it dry, and then come back and do the other coat because you're going to use the rest of that pink paint, the darker pink paint, for the third glass. You're just going to mix some more white into that darker pink paint, so that way you get a very light pink, if this all makes sense. So that way you go from white to light pink to dark pink, so it'll be like an ombre effect. So anyways, I did that with the last piece of glass and painted that with 2 coats of the lighter pink paint. To speed up the drying process, I always use my blow dryer in between, so that way everything dries quickly. So once everything was dry, I went ahead and wrote inside the bottom of each one of them some candy heart sayings. The first one I wrote, "Be mine." And I used a pencil to write everything, so that way in case I made a mistake, I could come back and erase it. And then I came back and went over it with a black Sharpie marker. The second one I wrote, "Kiss me." And then the third one I just wrote, "Love you" on. And that was it for these simple dishes. I think they turned out so cute, and I love how they resemble little candy hearts, and they'd be perfect to display in your entryway with some packaged candy in them for Valentine's Day, or just around your house for cute decor.
This moment, can we stay here forever? Forever. Forever. Forever.
For this third DIY, I'm going to use 4 of these Bless Your Heart signs from Dollar Tree. I went ahead and removed the 4 hearts that pop off the signs. I'm going to save one for my next DIY in this video, and then I'll save the other 3 for maybe something else later on. Then I went ahead and sanded where the hearts were at on the signs, just to make sure everything was smooth. Next, I just took my white Rust-Oleum chalk paint and painted the front of the signs with 2 coats of paint to cover up the writing. After the signs were all dry, I just went ahead and flipped them over because I'm going to use the inside of the backs of these signs for my project. You could use the front if you wanted to, but I just like the 3D box looking effect, I guess. So I just went ahead and put everything together with some hot glue, and then I just took some of that light pink paint I had mixed from the last project, and I used that to paint the inside of these boxes. I did the inside and the sides of all of them. Then once those were dry, I just came back with some of the white chalk paint and very carefully painted the edges of the sign in white. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time in this video, but I think it would be super cute on the back of this if you would make this a dual purpose sign, and the back could be Easter decor. Plus the Easter decor isn't out at my Dollar Tree yet, so I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do anyways. But the last thing that I did to the sign was I just wrote in each box an X and an O with pencil, and then came back with my black Sharpie marker and filled it in, and I just made sure that I had an X on top of the O and the O on top of the X, if that makes sense, to keep them opposite. And that was it for this Valentine's sign. I think it looks really pretty and super cute.
Just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? Forever. Forever.
For the last DIY, I'm going to take one of those hearts that I tore off the sign in the previous DIY, and I am going to go ahead and place it in between 2 pieces of scrap wood, so that way it's easier to drill a hole on one side of the heart. Then I just took some of that leftover light pink paint I mixed and painted both the back and the front. Then I'm taking these pearls from Dollar Tree and some twine, and I'm just going to go ahead and place my heart on the twine and tie that on. And then I'm gonna take some hot glue, and at the end of the twine, I'm just gonna go ahead and place some on there. And that way, that's gonna make it easier for me to string these pearls onto the twine without the twine unraveling on me and causing a bunch of problems, and it's going to be easier for it to go through the holes. So then after I did that and the hot glue dried, I just went ahead and strung all of the pearls onto the piece of twine all the way down to where the heart is that I tied on. After the pearls were all strung onto the twine, I made a quick little tassel just by wrapping the twine around my 4 fingers a bunch of times, and then I took that loop off and wrapped some more twine at the top to create 2 loops. And then I just wrapped the excess twine around the top to make it look a little more bulkier. And then I just cut in between the bigger loop at the bottom to make my tassel. Then I just took the string where the beads were strung onto and used that to put through the smaller loop and tie the tassel on. And that was it. I think this turned out really pretty and cute for Valentine's Day.
This moment can always stay here forever, 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 forever.
I'm going to be making a pillow out of this craft fabric I found at Dollar Tree. It's just white fabric, and I just unfolded it and folded it over the opposite way so that the right sides were facing each other, and then ironed all the wrinkles out. Now on the opposite side of the folded part, I'm just going to use my hot glue gun, and I'm going to hot glue both pieces together. This is the long side that I'm starting on first, and I'm just going to start at one end and hot glue it all the way to the other end. Now you could definitely sew this pillowcase together. Also, you could use the fusible iron-on tape, or you could use a fabric glue. It's up to you. I just had hot glue on hand, and that is what worked for me. So I went ahead and continued hot gluing the 2 smaller sides down. On one of the smaller sides, I did leave an opening, so I only glued halfway down, and then I left that opening so that way I could fit my hand through there and turn the pillowcase inside or right side in, and then making sure I pushed the corners out so that way my corners were pointy. And then I just took some polyfill and filled the pillowcase up. Now if you're using stuffing from an old pillow or something like that, I would recommend using the lightest or white colored stuffing to fill this pillow, because the pillowcase is a little see-through, so if you used a different color, you would probably see it. Now I need to close that hole up that I left open to stuff my pillow with. So what I'm doing is just taking both sides, and I'm just folding a little piece of fabric over inside of the pillowcase, and then I'm going ahead and applying the hot glue in between the seam so that way I get a nice edge. And it's not perfect. It was a little rough with my thumb, but it worked out. Next, I'm going to decorate the pillow with these treat sacks from Dollar Tree. I have a red pack and a pink pack, and all I'm going to do is go ahead and cut all 3 of the pink hearts out, and then I'm just going to cut one of the red hearts out. Now I'm just going to take those hearts and lay them out on top of my pillow and arrange them the way I like them. I had 2 pink, and then I had a red one, and then another pink one. And this reminds me of the, I don't know if you guys saw it, but the little sign that I bought at Target where it has all of the pink hearts and then 1 red heart. That's kind of what gave me this idea. And all I'm going to do is just go ahead and hot glue all of those hearts down to the pillow. Lastly, I decided to wrap each heart with some twine so that way it would cover up the raw cut edges of the burlap hearts and give it more of a cleaner finished look. I just started at the bottom of each heart and wrapped my twine upwards around the heart, applying a little bit of hot glue as I put down the twine. I only used just basically what was on the end of my hot glue gun to glue the twine down, so that way I wouldn't have a big hot glue mess all over my pillow. And that was it. I love how this heart pillow turned out. I think it's perfect for Valentine's Day and spring. I'm going to use 4 of these stretched canvases in the 8x10 size, and I'm going to start off just by removing the canvas from the frames. I tried using scissors, that didn't work very well, so I just used a flathead screwdriver to remove all of the staples, and I just did this to all 4 of the canvases. So with my original idea, I was going to just go ahead and reattach all of the canvases to each one of the frames and have the frames exposed. So that's what I'm doing here. I just hot glued the canvas to the back of the frame and then cut the excess canvas from around the frame. And then I went ahead and attached all 4 of the canvases together to make a big picture window sort of deal. And I just use hot glue to attach everything. Of course, E6000 or wood glue would work in this case. You just have to wait for it to dry longer. But then I decided that I didn't want the canvas attached to the frame, so I just went ahead and removed all of the canvas, and now I have just a big open window. Next, I'm taking this heart sign from Dollar Tree, and I just took some sandpaper and used that to remove the glitter from the front of the sign. Now, this idea originally stemmed from something I saw on Pinterest, and I thought I would recreate it. Now, I did see a couple weeks ago that Heidi Sombel actually created something like this on a smaller scale as well on her channel, and she used different supplies, and I love how it turned out. It turned out so pretty. Check that video out. I'll leave it linked down below in the description box. I'm also collabing with her on this coming Monday on a video, so you'll want to stay tuned for that. Now, the next thing I did was just fill in that little hole at the top of the heart with some hot glue, and now I'm just taking some chalk paint that I had mixed in my previous video to get this color, and I'm painting the heart with 2 coats of that. Next, I'm just going to flip the heart over, and I'm going to remove the ribbon on one side of the heart that's holding it together, and I'm going to replace that with some of this lace ribbon from Dollar Tree. I just left some ribbon at the top so that way I could wrap it around the frame, and then I cut the excess ribbon at the bottom even with the heart. And then I went ahead and did the other ribbon on the other side, and I left one ribbon on while I was doing the other ribbon, if that makes sense, so that way this wouldn't get all wonky on me and I could hold everything together. Now I'm going to bring my frames back in, or my window that I made, and I'm just going to drape that ribbon that is attached to my heart over the top 2 frames, and then I'm just going to cut that excess ribbon and apply some hot glue on the back of those frames to attach the ribbon to. Then I decided to make a couple bows out of that same ribbon, and I didn't realize how hard it was to tie a bow without a thumb, but it is pretty difficult, but I made it work out. And then I just took some hot glue and I attached those bows to the top of the front of the frame where the ribbon meets the frame. And that was it for this DIY. I think it is so pretty in Farmhouse.
Now out, we scream, we fight, and no one knows the reason. We're both getting out of line. Now say goodbye and try to move on. I'll get over you, only wish that I knew how to go on. Baby, you and me.
It really gives me the spring vibes. So I'm going to start off with this Valentine's Day red truck sign from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use a box cutter to score around the hearts that are in the truck bed. So I'm just going to score around it until the hearts all break off, and I am just left with an exposed truck bed. Now I need to remove all of that glitter that's on the truck, so I'm going to use a 60 grit sandpaper to sand the whole thing down and remove all of that glitter. Now it's time for the fun part, and that is to paint the truck to transform it. I'm going to use this Waverly brand chalk paint in the color Agave. I love this blue color. It's so pretty, and it goes with my decor in my home. Plus, it's something that I think is very spring-like and summer-like, and I can leave this up all year long. So what I did first before I started painting was I did take a picture of what the truck looked like. So that way I had something to reference as I was painting the truck, so that way I could get all of the details back on the truck since I was covering up all those details while I was painting it. So the first thing I did do was start off with a smaller paintbrush, and I just went ahead and edged out the whole truck, and then after I was done I just went in and filled the rest of it in, so that way I had my blue truck. Once the blue paint was dry, it was time to go ahead and do some of the details. So I used a black paint pen to do all of the tires on the truck. I just outlined them and then filled them in. I think that worked the best for me instead of using paint in a paintbrush. And then I came back and I traced around the window and then traced around the whole truck and outlined the whole truck in black. This is where taking that picture of the original truck in the beginning really helped me out, because I always need something to look at when I am trying to draw. I don't do very well just freehanding it. I just need something to reference, so that way I know it looks how it's supposed to look, if that makes sense. So as I was looking at that picture, I used my black marker or my black paint pen and drew the details on to the truck. If I messed up, I did have that agave paint next to me, so that way I could cover it up if I needed to. And then I had that white paint pen, and I just used that to make kind of like the shine marks on the truck and make it look more realistic. So I think it did turn out a little cartoony, but I still like the way it looks, and I love the color because I think it looks very springy. Last thing I did to this truck was I wanted to add flowers to the truck bed. So what I did was I played around with this for a long time to figure out how I was going to attach something to hold the flowers. Finally, I decided on these clay pots, and I attached one right behind the wheel of the truck, and I made sure that it set flat and the truck set right up against that clay pot. So that way it made a stand for it and it held the truck up. You could just leave it as one clay pot in the back of the truck, but I decided to add two. So I wanted it to be a little bit higher and you wouldn't be able to see the bottom of the clay pot. So I hot glued it up above the truck bed and right next to the other clay pot. I reinforced the clay pots with a lot of hot glue to make sure that they wouldn't fall off. Lastly, I just filled the pots with some of these roses from Dollar Tree, and I love how this turned out. It's perfect for spring, but it's perfect for Valentine's Day too.
I know we had problems, I thought we could fix them, but we got tired. There's nothing left to do but to say.
Use this sign that I used in my previous video just for the galvanized hearts, and I'm just going to flip it over and remove the staples and the hanger that is on the back of it with a flathead screwdriver. So what I'm going to do is make a planter box with these two signs, but I need a bottom and two smaller sides. So I'm going to use this foam board from Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to take one of the signs and trace it out and then use a box cutter to just cut that out, and that will be the bottom of my box. And then for the sides, I'm just going to go ahead and eyeball it up to where I had cut the last one, and then make sure that it is the same width as the sign, and then cut two pieces out, and those will be the smaller sides of my box. Now what I'm going to do with the sign that has the love written in glitter on it, I'm just going to go ahead and take my white chalk paint and give it 2 coats. And I left the glitter on the sign so that way you could see the lettering through the chalk paint. You can't see the glitter anymore, you can just see the raised lettering. And that allowed me to use my paint pen and just trace over that lettering the same way it was, but just in black. So that is what I did here. I just used my paint pen and traced over that lettering, and then I had the word love exactly like it was, but in the color and the style that I liked. Then I decided to go ahead and fill in the heart on the sign with this pink peachy chalk paint that I mixed up a few videos ago, and that way it would just kind of tie in with the rest of my Valentine's Day decor. I wanted to say quickly, thank you guys so much for your comments and your concerns last week over my hurt thumb. It is doing much better now. It's just a little bruised. I really appreciate all of the comments and the concerns, so I just wanted to say thank you so much for that. All right, back to the video. Next, I just took the other part of the sign and sanded the 3 spots where the galvanized hearts were, just so that way the paper didn't continue to peel up when I painted over it. Then I gave it 2 coats of white chalk paint. I also gave 2 coats of white chalk paint to the smaller squares for the smaller sides that I cut out. Now it's time to put the planter box together. So I'm going to start off with the piece of foam board that I cut out for the bottom of the planter box, and I did not paint that piece of foam board because it's going to be on the bottom so you won't see it. And then I'm going to use the front of the planter box, which is the sign that has the love on it, and I'm just going to apply some hot glue to that bottom edge and then apply that to the front of the sign, and then do the same thing for the 2 sides. Just apply some hot glue and then glue it down to the front and the bottom of the sign. Then for the last piece is the back of the board, and I'm just going to apply some hot glue to all 3 of those sides and place the back on. Now all that's left to do is fill up the planter box, and you can use whatever flowers or whatever you would like to fill up your box. I just used some floral foam, and then I didn't have enough, so I used some pool noodles to fill up the rest of the box, so that way I'd have something for my flowers to stick into. And then I used some of the peach colored roses in the light peach and in the dark peach to fill up my box, and I left the leaves on, and then I just sporadically placed them throughout, and I love how this turned out for Valentine's Day. It works perfectly with the rest of my decor, and you can also use it throughout spring as well.
Closer. it's with you. Everything's moving slower. I don't know what it is you do. I've been looking at you all night, trying to figure you out. I just wanna make you smile. Hold your hand in my hand, looking at the sun.
For my second DIY, I'm going to use these 2 love signs from Dollar Tree with the metal hearts on them. So I'm just going to pry the metal hearts off with a flathead screwdriver, and I am going to save both of them for my last DIY. So I just set those aside, and now I'm just going to take a piece of sandpaper and sand down the spots where the metal hearts were glued down at, so that way I have a smooth finish for this sign when I'm done. Then I just cut off the hangers for this sign, and I did fill in the holes with some hot glue, just so that way you couldn't see the holes anymore as well. And then I went over this with 2 coats of white chalk paint. Once the signs were all dry, I just went ahead and flipped them both over onto their backs, and I put them up against each other on the long sides, and then used some hot glue to secure them together. And to make sure that they were really secure together, I just went ahead and reinforced them with some popsicle sticks. Next, I wanted to define the lines in the sign because they are like little divots in there to make it look like shiplap. So I just used my black paint pen and just traced over those lines. But then I came back with my white chalk paint and I just dry brushed over those lines, so that way they looked like there were grooves in there, but they weren't so dark. Next, I'm going to use this tissue paper from Dollar Tree. It comes in a pack of 24. There are 4 sheets per color, so I'm going to use the 4 sheets of pink for this DIY. I just cut strips out of those 4 sheets, and then I just cut squares out of the strips. Your squares and your strips don't have to be perfect. I didn't measure or anything. I just eyeballed them and cut them out. And then I didn't end up using all of the squares that I cut out, but you could for this project, just depending on how you prefer it. Now what I'm going to do is start off with just one of the squares that I cut out, and I'm just going to bunch it in the middle and take some hot glue and start gluing it down on the sign. Now I'm going to be making a heart shape out of the tissue paper. So I just continued to hot glue until I started to get the shape of a heart. And then I realized that I probably should have took a pencil and drew my heart out on the sign, so I had something to follow, so that way my heart wouldn't get wonky and just wouldn't look like a heart. So I just went ahead and did that after I got started, and then it was easier to go ahead and follow the outline of that heart with the tissue paper. That is all I did for this DIY. You could definitely make it your own by using more tissue paper and making your heart thicker, or filling in your heart with more tissue paper, or using different colors. It's up to you. I really love how it turned out, and it's such an easy project to do.
It's what you're doing that's making me feel like I'm falling. Yeah, I'm falling in love. Falling in love.
For the last DIY, I'm going to use these 2 glass jars from Dollar Tree. I'm also going to use these foam heart stickers from Dollar Tree. Now these particular glass jars have sections on them, so what I'm going to do is take 3 of the smaller heart stickers from the package, and I'm going to place them vertical onto one section of the glass jar. And then after I do one section, I'm just going to go ahead and skip a section and then do the next one, and continue that all the way around the glass jar until I have it full with the stickers. So I'm not just going to leave these stickers on the glass jar this way. I'm actually placing them on here so that way I can paint over them, and then when I peel the stickers off, I will have the silhouette of a heart. So I am going to use some of this pink paint that I used In my previous DIY, I had already mixed it from a few videos ago. It's just chalk paint. I'm going to do 2 coats on the glass jar, making sure to get the crevices of the stickers. And now once the jar is all dry, I'm just going to go ahead and remove all of the stickers. And like I said, I am left with my heart silhouettes.
What you're doing that's making me feel like I'm falling.
You always want to seal your painted glass with something so that way the paint doesn't chip off, especially with chalk paint because it chips off really easily. So in this case, I'm just using some Mod Podge that dries clear. You could use polyacrylic or just anything that dries clear. Now I'm going to use those metal hearts that I took off my sign in the second DIY, and I'm just going to use my drill to drill a hole into each one of them in the center at the top. All that's left to do is string some twine through these metal hearts and tie that twine around the top of each jar. And that is it. You can put candles in these with the lids off, of course, or candy. It's up to you, but I think these are so cute.
You're looking good tonight. I wanna kiss you before the sun goes down. It's what you're doing, it's making me feel like I'm falling. And when you're moving.
First wreath, I am using these 2 glittery hearts that come from Dollar Tree, and I'm hot gluing them together, one towards the bottom of the other one, kind of catty-cornered, and then I'm tying them together also with a piece of twine. Now I'm just applying floral moss to both of my hearts with my hot glue gun, and I just got the floral moss from Dollar Tree. I used a total of 3 bags for both hearts, and I'm just covering the front and the inner side of both of the hearts. I did not do the back side of either of the hearts. Once the hearts were covered in moss, I went back with my scissors and gave them both just a little bit of a trim so that way there wasn't a ton of moss falling off. Next, I'm taking these flowers from Dollar Tree and I'm just pulling off the white parts off of the stems. And I'm going to take my hot glue and then I'm just going to follow the heart form with each stem and just kind of layering it as I go all the way down and cutting pieces off as I need to. I just kind of played around with it until I got it the way I liked it. Also, it does take a few seconds for the glue to adhere to the floral moss. So you'll want to press down on it firmly for a few seconds and hold it there so that way the floral pieces don't lift up right after you glue them. I just used my scissors to hold them down so I didn't burn my fingers, but you could use finger guards or like a silicone spatula. Some people use that, but my scissors worked in this case. And that's it for this wreath. I think it turned out pretty. It's kind of springy and it's definitely neutral and gives that farmhouse feel. You could use different colored flowers if you wanted to, but I like the way this one looks. So for this second wreath, I'm going to use the greenery from the floral from the last wreath and I'm just plucking them off of the stems. Okay, so I slowed this part down so you guys can see what I'm doing here because I'm not sure if I can explain it very well, but I'm gonna try. So basically what I'm doing is I'm taking a piece of greenery and I placed some hot glue in between 2 of the leaves towards the bottom of that piece of greenery. Then I took another piece of greenery and I inserted the bottom of that piece of greenery inside the 2 leaves to hot glue them together. And I'm just going to keep repeating this step. I took a new piece of greenery and put some hot glue in between the 2 leaves and then inserted that whole stem that I'm making here, the bottom of it, in between the 2 leaves. And I'm going to do this with 2 of the bunches of greenery And basically I am creating a vine. Okay, so now my vine is finished, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the bottom of that vine and I'm going to bring it around to make a circle, and I'm just going to hot glue that bottom of the vine into the top of the vine in between the two leaves there. So I'm basically creating a small little wreath. Now I'm just going to take another bunch of the greenery and I'm just going to randomly hot glue that around my circle just to fill it in a little bit more. Once I get it all filled in with the other set of greenery, I am just going to hot glue the pieces that kind of flare out a little bit too much, just to make it a tighter circle, so that way when you pick it up it's not so flimsy and it stays in a circle shape. Now I'm going to take some of this burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree and cut a piece and just dovetail the ends on it. Then I'm going to take some of these wooden letters from Dollar Tree that spell out love and paint those with some ivory chalk paint. Then I'm going to glue those with my hot glue gun onto the ribbon and hot glue the ribbon onto the greenery. Then I'm going to take this frame and take out the plastic and just attach my wreath with the burlap ribbon. So I think this turned out really cute, and this is something that you could use all year round or at least into spring, and you can change out the letters and make it say whatever you want. For this last wreath, I am using the heart wire wreath form from Dollar Tree and a thing of this nautical rope. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to cover the inside of the wreath with the nautical rope. So I'm just wrapping it around the inner ring here and tracing the heart out. And then when I get to the bottom, I am just going to keep going around that heart and keep tracing it and hot gluing the nautical rope to itself till I get the whole heart filled in. Then when I got towards the end of filling up the heart, I cut my nautical rope and then I took that last end piece and stuffed it through the other side of the heart and hot glued it on the back there. Next, I used these cream colored roses from Dollar Tree and I hot glued them around the wire wreath form. You could use whatever color you would like. Dollar Tree has pink and red roses as well, so I was just using the cream colored ones because it just went with the farmhouse neutral theme that I was going for this year. When I was placing the roses around the wreath form, if I saw that there was any gaps, I would just take a petal from each of the roses that were next to each other and hot glue those together, and that would fill in the gaps. Also, to add a little bit of greenery color to the wreath, I used the leaves and just hot glued them to the bottom of the rose before I hot glued them to the wreath form. I think I ended up using about 8 or 9 bunches of roses to fill this wreath up, and I think it looks really full and pretty. I think it's very neutral and you could use this well into spring and not just for Valentine's Day. So for this first Valentine's DIY, I'm using these wooden letters that come from Dollar Tree. I got the 2 X's and 2 O's out of 2 packs of the wooden letters, and I am just going to cover each letter front and back with some of this reindeer moss that I got from Dollar Tree. And you could just use any type of moss you'd like. This is just what I had left over, and I'm just attaching it with some hot glue. The next thing I did was I took my scissors and I just trimmed the reindeer moss on each letter just to make the letter stand out more. Now I'm going to take 2 of these styrofoam blocks that come from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to place the tin upside down on one of them and then just cut this around the styrofoam to cut out a circle. And then all I'm going to do is just cut that circle in half and place half into 2 tins, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the other block. Now I'm going to take my moss covered letters and I'm going to hot glue one to the top of each one of these wooden dowels from Dollar Tree. Next, I'm going to take my letters on a stick and I'm just going to add one to each container, just pushing the stick down into the styrofoam. Now I'm just going to add some of the moss to the top of the containers here with some hot glue. Lastly, I just took some twine and tied a simple bow to the top of each one of these dowels near the letter. And that was it. These were all done. I really love how these turned out. I think they are so cute. I think they would be perfect to display in like a little tiered tray. They're so versatile. You could change the letters out. You could make it spell home or love, and you can use it all throughout spring or even all year round. For this next Valentine's DIY, I used this love sign that came from Dollar Tree, and I'm just removing the twine hanger on the back. And then I am going to take my twine and I am just going to wrap each letter in the twine till the whole word is covered. I'm not gonna lie, this took a long time. Probably took about an hour. I sat back and watched TV while I was doing it. And if I could do it all over again, I probably wouldn't wrap every letter in twine, maybe just the O, and paint the L, V, and E, but in the end I do like how it turned out, so it wasn't that bad. Now what I'm doing here is just adding some hot glue to the bottom of the love sign, and then I'm going to glue it down to the floral foam that I got from Dollar Tree. And I just reinforced it with some hot glue on the back and the front of the sign, but you could add some like Jenga blocks on the back or the front if you didn't think it was sturdy enough. Now I'm just going to add these white roses all over the floral foam, all around the love sign, and I just got these white roses at Dollar Tree. You could add whatever color roses you would like. I just like the white to keep it neutral and farmhouse looking. Alright, this is how it looked after it was all done. I added a little lace bow at the top with just some of that lace ribbon from Dollar Tree, and I think it turned out really pretty. I think this could definitely be used all year round. You could use it at a wedding or a bridal shower also, so it's perfect for spring. So I really like how this one turned out. For my last Valentine's DIY, I am going to use this wooden heart that comes from Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to cut off the hanger because I don't need it. And then I am going to take this gel stain and just stain the front of my heart. Then I'm going to take the ivory colored chalky paint and just lightly brush a coat of that on top of the gel stain. While I was waiting for the wooden heart to dry, I took this glittery heart from Dollar Tree and I am wrapping it in twine. This did not take anywhere near as long as the love sign did to wrap in twine. It did take a little bit of time, but I think it was well worth it in the end. Okay, now that my heart is wrapped in twine and my other heart is dry, I am just going to take my twine heart and place it on top of the wooden heart and hot glue it down to that. And this is going to kind of create a shadow box effect. Now I'm just going to take some Spanish moss, also from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to hot glue it inside of the heart at the bottom there. And then I have these two white doves that I got at Christmas time from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to hot glue those to the heart and the moss. And if you can't find these doves, which I'm sure you can't anymore at Dollar Tree, they do sell little birds in the floral section that you could use instead. Then I wanted a base for my heart to sit on, so I took this glass candle holder I had lying around that was from Dollar Tree, and I had painted it a long time ago with just some white chalk paint. And I just added some glue inside the top there and just placed the bottom of the heart inside the candle holder and added some extra glue for reinforcement. Lastly, I just added this little twine bow to the top of the candle holder, and this is how it turned out. I think it turned out so cute. I love this. It's perfect for farmhouse and even for spring, and I love the two little lovebirds kissing in their nest, so it's perfect for Valentine's Day decor.